Well, hello, Endow ladies. It is week 4 of our Advent study series on Pope Benedict XVI's Deus, Caritas Est. We're so excited. Thank you so much for journeying with us these 4 weeks. And we have a little special announcement. Again, I'm here with Sister Karolyn Nunes and Father Luke Doyle. And Father Luke is offering Sister Karolyn stickers. Show our YouTube watchers. Look at those beauties.
Look at that, they glow.
I want one of those stickers. But the first 10 reviewers of this podcast, raters and reviewers of this podcast series, will receive an autograph from Father Luke Doyle. No, and a sticker.
They're great on coffee mugs.
So the YouTube watchers can see it, but Sister's blushing right now because she has become a sticker sensation. But please consider leaving a rating and review of this podcast series so that more people can access the awesome thought of Pope Benedict XVI, that the world can know God's love and how to live in it, and that they're welcome in the Catholic Church. And Father, thanks so much for the sticker campaign. And I'm sorry, Sister, but
it's all for the gospel. It's all for the gospel. If it helps people come to know the merciful love of Jesus, then so be it. You know?
Hey, some give all, Sister.
Don't forget to send me a sticker, Father. And for those who would like to participate in the spiritual work of mercy of instructing the ignorant, if you would like to facilitate this Endow study, don't forget December 31st, the discount of 20% off a study guide, God is Love, expires. God is Love 20 for a 20% discount. And I just hope so many of you decide to facilitate this study because it is just so great. And we're just big Pope Benedict, Joseph Ratzinger fans over here. So, all right, week 4, Christmas is almost here. Can't believe it.
It's gone so fast.
It's gone so fast. Okay, here we go with week 4, and we're looking at paragraphs 30 until the end of the document. So, from this section, what struck you guys?
Well, we got some more famous Pope Benedict quotation marks in paragraph 30, where he talks about mass communication and how great it is that we can experience this togetherness. And I just love it because there's a sense of, oh yeah, we're so connected to the whole world, but are we really? I think about so many of the young people that I walk with in their discernment or just in general in a high school classroom or in youth ministry, that they have this sense of like, I have all these people who follow me and who know me, but they don't actually know. And there's a real liberation for me because I'm not on any kind of social media unless people put me there. But I don't have that pressure to make sure.
Stickers.
No, I was gonna say you're just on a bunch of stickers.
I'm just on a bunch of stickers, which I did not put myself on there for the record as well. Anyway, but yeah, there's a sense that the instantaneousness of communication, we can just know things instantly, we can get things out there instantly, that in some ways we can have more of a global awareness, but this also can be a pitfall because it's not always real. There's a lot, sometimes it's too virtual to actually be real. And here we are like doing this via Skype or whatever, so that we can all be together on this podcast.
Yeah. Well, Zoom meetings are different than social media. There's something, because we're actually face to face, even if we're not in person, whereas social media, I think is the bigger, the virtual reality that's not as humane, I would say. Thanks to both of you for bringing up Pope Benedict's quotations and like the snarkiness and the little sass. He's just the sarcasm of like the togetherness, because to me, this is a big problem, and I don't mean problem in a negative way, but a problem in like something that I'm still always like grappling with social media, because I don't actually like being on social media, but it allows me access to my former theology students, to different people. It is a way of communication. I was in a conference once where all of the speakers, except for me and maybe another woman, had found community in each other through social media. So there's a lot of good that comes out of social media, but it can't replace actual person-to-person community.
I think it also begs the question, Simone, of just like, what's the level of encounter as well? Because a lot of times we can get together and be together actually in real life, but even in some ways we're still not together because there's not a real giving and receiving and sharing of any substance. right? Jesus tells us, and I think these are the words that are etched into Sister's consecration ring, put out into the deep. And it's there that we can let down our nets for a catch. Because the tendency, I think, in the culture today is, we just keep on to keep on, don't talk religion, politics, anything else. And we just, it's kind of just this superficial existence when there's not really a true encounter of the other in the midst of their brokenness, their woundedness, in that ability to truly receive and give ourselves. I mean, we're a culture that just talks about the weather and sports and yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, Father. I think that's such an excellent point, because there's like a lot of loneliness in being with the people when you actually aren't connecting in a real way. I think you're right. I think that's very defining of our culture. And I think that's why I love Endow so much, because it just provides, Endow groups just provide the content to have like deep friendship. Because you're kind of forced into like actual authentic conversation, and more women are very hungry for that, because like every human person needs that. We all need authentic community, and we need a space to like have those conversations that you're not going to just necessarily answer to someone like, how are you? And then go into like how you're battling in the spiritual realms, right? But if you're like in a group where you're all together for this purpose, it kind of opens up that space.
And that's where authentic unity is born. Authentic unity is the fruit of letting Jesus touch our wounds. And right, I mean, authentic unity is the fruit of the healing touch of Christ into our mess. And if we're not willing to do that, then we're not going to live from that healing that Christ desires to give us. And there's never really going to be the spirit of like true togetherness.
Yeah, beautiful.
At the same time, like part of what this does, this idea of globalization that he talks about provides, is the sense that our human community and our human family does transcend those who are right next door to us, and that our neighbor truly is any human being is really our neighbor. And so that, he says later on in the paragraph, concern for our neighbor transcends the confines of national communities and has increasingly broadened its horizon to the whole world. And so when there's natural disaster or there's war, we can have an awareness of it. We can be including those who are suffering in our prayers and in our sacrifices, and have a real outreach to our neighbor, even if it's just a spiritual outreach.
Yeah, I was really moved by all of the private gestures of Americans who were, the whole Afghanistan disaster, it's still probably a disaster, that the amount of concern, and I know we had our people there, and that's probably a lot of the concern, but just the fact that there are people that made personal sacrifices to go, like sent their private jets to like go and get people out. So yeah, very good.
And that's beautiful, but it's a both and, but again, that also begs the question of, okay, like, maybe we're super concerned in charity about what's happening in Afghanistan or on the other side of the world, but like, can we love the person that God has put right next to us? I mean, how many people do we blow past on our drive to work every day? How hard is it for us to love our husbands and kids, but for us to, be so compassionate and loving about those neighbors that live 6,000 miles away from us? Remember, Mother Teresa used to tell people like, go home and find your own Calcutta.
I know. I was just going to bring her up because I remember hearing that as a young adult, thinking Mother Teresa's being so weird. Like, she's in Calcutta and we're all like supposedly offering to go help her. And she's like, no, you stay and love your families. Maybe if you get interested, if you do well with the little things, like the person right in front of you, then maybe you'll get a call to like, to go to India or whatever. But for now, just do that well. Of course she said it in her charitable, holy way. But I mean, I think as I get older, seeing my own like limitations and resistances to like, loving the person right in front of me and whatnot, I see that, oh yeah, that's actually the typical ordinary battle is to look at those right in front of me with the eyes of Jesus, and to have a loving personal concern, quote Benedict, but not his quotes, right? The loving personal concern of those who are in my actual circle.
Is it Chesterton that says that Jesus tells us to love our neighbor and our enemy generally because they're usually the same person?
I love
Sounds Chestertonian.
So Chester, and it's like it's like family, right? Like, yeah, Oh, I love that, Father. Great point. So, okay, moving on. Yeah, and then on that subject, he goes back to discussing Emperor Julian the Apostate as he says here on paragraph 31, the reform of paganism attempted by Emperor Julian the Apostate is only an initial example of this effect. Here we see how the power of Christianity spread well beyond the frontiers of the Christian faith. So that idea of taking care of the church, the family of God first, and then extending to the ends of the earth. For this reason, it is very important that the church's charitable activity maintains all of its splendor and does not become just another form of social assistance. And then he asked the question, so what are the essential elements of Christian and ecclesial charity? So I guess let's talk about that.
Yeah. And this follows on previously when he speaks about the need for a true humanism. It all comes out right here. And this first thing that is so necessary for it to be a Christian and ecclesial charity is that it's the simple response to immediate needs. So the corporal works of mercy are all kind of laid out for us there. But then to remember that we're dealing with human beings, and human beings need humanity. They need that heartfelt concern, that actual charity of the heart, that we're removed with pity in a sense, not to pity people, not to put ourselves above other people, but to be so moved to go and love and find people on the side of the road in a very real way. I had this experience a number of months ago. I was praying with the Good Samaritan parable, and I was feeling kind of like the guy beat up on the side of the road. I was just kind of a mess, and needing to recognize that Jesus wanted to come to me even in that. And I had a young lady who was supposed to be coming to visit, and her car broke down on the side of the road. And immediately I was in mama bear mode, and I was driving 2.5 hours to go pick her up and to bring her back here. And as I was driving, Jesus just said to me, yeah, I will never pass you by. And what you're feeling in your heart right now, what's propelling you forward to go get her, I'm going to drive 2.5 hours each way to make sure that you get here safely. That, how much more does Jesus do that for us? But this is the Good Samaritan way of living. This is what Jesus lives. And so it's all in the gospel, and it's all the way that we are moved to be formed in his heart to live and love the same way.
I love that. That happened to me a few weeks ago. My car wasn't working in the parking garage, and it backed out. So I was of course, blocking everybody trying to come through. I'm just Lord, why? Why do you allow this to happen to me? It's just so it's an inconvenience, but it's also embarrassing because you're that person, and this car drove up. I'm oh, great. I'm going to get yelled at, and this one's going to be mad at me. And she actually was an employee of the hotel and was oh, shall I call the security guard for you? And I was thank you, Lord. You actually showed up. And with the exact right person who was super nice and who was who's the security guard person that takes care of these problems. So I felt kind of bad that I was I just felt humbled that Jesus was I got you. I sent someone to respond to your immediate need right then and there. And I don't spare you the torture because it was a little torturous, but I sent help, and I sent the exact right person to help you at that time. And I think that happens a lot. And I feel honestly, truthfully, that it's only been in the last couple of years that I've become more and more aware of that kind of care that you were talking about, sister.
Well, this in some ways circles back to what Father Luke was talking about in the last podcast about the by chance, right? That there's a sense of we're dealing with human beings. They need humanity, and they need our humanity in the right moment.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, it's amazing how as a priest, the Lord uses everything, including my stupidity. Just this last week, I went to go anoint somebody, and I wrote down the wrong number of the hospital room that I needed to go see this person. And so I walk into this hospital room and start ministering to somebody that didn't ask for a priest and didn't know that a priest was going to be showing up. And then 10 minutes later, you get to hear, "Bless me, Father, I've sinned. It's been 37 years.
Oh my God, Father! What a happy fall! What a great scene!
Yeah, and so we want to be humbly confident that even in the midst of our complete and total brokenness and inability to take notes well and all of it, the Lord doesn't fear it. The Lord does not fear our wounds and our weakness. He doesn't fear our insecurity, and He's yeah, you know what? Father, thanks for messing up today. Please keep doing it. Keep up the good work.
Oh my God. Yeah. I just absolutely love that story. 37 years. What a victory.
Big fish right there.
That's actually the phrase I was
no.
thinking. Big fish. That was
And it's such a beautiful gift too for like, Father Luke's own pride. It's like Jesus clearly saying, this was not you, bud. Okay. This is all me real in the sky.
Yeah. I will use even your stupidity. I think that's actually the launching pad to spiritual maturity. If we can get over ourselves, really, like
100%.
I feel like
It'd be great. We have to get over ourselves.
If we get over ourselves and just be like, yeah, my God, is his preferred mode of using me is actually the things about myself that I'm not the biggest fan of. But he just delights in it. So I love that, Father. What a great story. And yeah, sister, that line, they need humanity, they need heartfelt concern. And then he even says, like, in addition to professional training, there has to be formation of the heart. Like, that's crucial.
The formation of the heart is born first and foremost in prayer. And so I think, we have to name it, we have to acknowledge it, that if we're going to love with the heart of Jesus, if we're going to see other people, be moved by the heart of Jesus, we have to be in communion with the heart of Jesus. And so I think, even as a priest, sometimes it can be really easy to like put off prayer until, after I'm doing these 4, 5, or 6 things for Jesus. And that formation of the heart is essential. If we are not praying, we're not moving with the Lord. We have to pray.
Oh, amen to that. And it's such a battle. It's such a battle. I find that like my prayer life's going well. Things are finally getting organized. And then the moment when I think I've reached my peak, then all of a sudden the next day I don't want to pray anymore. Like, what's up with that?
You peaked too early. That's the problem.
What's that?
Too early.
Yeah. Doesn't Fulton Sheen say like religious sisters need coffee before prayer? I think he says that in his book. What is that book? On the priesthood. I think he says like we need to make sure that coffee gets served first.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love him. Okay, and then the second element is he says Christian charitable activity must be independent of parties and ideologies.
Amen.
Amen to that.
And this speaks about the kind of, go ahead.
Go ahead, sister, please.
No, this kind of speaks of that false claim, or kind of the false idea that charity enables people. Like, well, if we just give handouts all the time, then nothing's ever going to change. And if we give something to this homeless person, they're just going to go out and spend it on alcohol or drugs, or like that kind of narrative. It's like very much kind of bound up with the Marxist ideology.
Right.
But this is the section where I had to go look up a word because I was like, I don't know what Moloch of the future means. And so when I looked it up, there's actually a false god in the Old Testament that the people believed that if they did child sacrifice, then they would be financially prosperous. And so just so interesting to look at that in the context of our own culture right now, that how often are human lives being sacrificed in the name of the almighty dollar.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Such a painful reality.
Mm-hmm. I recently participated in the Life Chain. And this year, I've done it many, many times, but this year was the most volatile I've ever experienced personally, standing on the side of the road. And I thought, ooh, this is a culture that needs prayer and sacrifice. And that, standing.
Prayer, sacrifice, and fasting. I'm reading this book. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, called Eat. It sounds like Eat, Pray, Love. It's not that. Eat, Fast, Feast. And I think it's written by a Catholic guy. But what's interesting about it is, I'm always thinking like, okay, if we can get, before we can evangelize the world, we need a new evangelization. Like, we ourselves in the church need to be re-evangelized. We need a revival. We need to learn how to pray. We need to encounter Jesus again. We need to know the essence of Christianity. And the idea of like, we need to set leisurely conditions. Like, we need to have leisure in order to pray. And then we have prayer, then we can have festival and worship and the liturgy and so forth. And then what this book kind of brought out for me was monasticism built Western civilization because of the leisure, the contemplation, the prayer that produced that creativity that built civilization. But they were also fasting. And we don't do that very well. I don't do that very well. I mean, my mom's Egyptian, so she does it really, really well. And she makes fun of me, which I think I say a lot on this podcast, my poor mother, and one time she called me, Father, you're going to love this too much. And she goes, okay, I have to tell you something. I'm going to sound upset at you, but I'm not upset, but I just have to tell you this. She goes, you do not fast enough. why don't you love Jesus?
Oh man.
And I wanted to get like super defensive, and Mom, I'm a grown-up woman. I don't need you to preach out, but she's right. And then connecting that with that book I was reading at the time, my mom must have gotten a word of knowledge and prayer or something, where it's like, it wasn't just prayer and contemplation. It was prayer, contemplation, and fasting that rooted out those terrible evils in the early church. And here we are again, like you said, sister. So we've got to pray. We also have to fast, and that's hard. That's not easy.
Right.
Sister, I think that is totally worth repeating what you had said, though, that Satan doesn't come up with new attacks and new ideas because the old ones keep working. And so, right, Israel, the people that struggled with God thousands of years ago on their journey to the promised land, they chose to worship a God of financial savviness, and they worship that God by sacrificing their children. And that is exactly what's happening in our culture today still. And it's not a sacrifice that gets headlines, but it's a real sacrifice nonetheless. And I was struck by that same thing, but maybe I guess in a little bit of a different, not totally dissimilar, but token. Christian charitable activity must be independent of parties and ideologies. That's also because the person is not a means to be used, but an entity to be loved. And when we start seeing other people as when we are at the service not of Jesus Christ, not of real love, but of parties and ideologies, the person then becomes a means to an end, a means to this ideology getting what it champions, or this party getting what the platform is, rather than us just simply seeing and loving the person. So love by its nature is without condition. And in order for it to be that, it has to be stripped of ideology and a political party.
Well, and the independence of Christian charity is that program that I talked about a little bit earlier, that the program of the Good Samaritan, the program of Jesus, is a heart that sees. Government ideologies it's not based on a heart that sees at all. At least it's a heart that sees a person, for sure. It's a heart that maybe sees stats or sees dollar signs, but it's not based on a heart that sees the person.
Yeah, and I really appreciate in this section how he talks about successful collaborations between the church and state, because the state's realm is justice, whereas the church's is charity. And so there are ways to like work together. But yes, you're never going to legislate a heart that sees. You can't. And Julian, the apostate, tried to do that, and it didn't work because he
became an apostate.
Yeah, because as he makes in point 3 about what does Christian charity look like, love is free, and you cannot compel, you cannot force love. It has to be free. There's so much in that. I also have underlined, often the deepest cause of suffering is the very absence of God. That's something that the government cannot provide. That's like the realm of the church, is to provide the presence of God and participation in God's glory being the source of our joy. That's not something that has to be generated out of faith.
I was struck in this section too by the reality that a Christian knows when it's time to speak and when it's time to say nothing. You have that underlined too, Father Luke?
We take the same ones. Yep. Kindred spirits.
Great. Anything else from that section?
I think, because that does talk about how charity cannot be used as a means to engaging proselytism or forcing conversion in any sort, that the reality of our witness and the importance of witness, whether it be in words or actions. Now, hashtag things St. Francis never said, the whole preach the gospel if necessary, use words.
I bet that's such a pet peeve for you as a Francis.
He never said it.
He never said that.
He also never said the peace prayer. So that's a whole nother thing for another time.
Oh, I know. And then the terrible churchy songs.
It makes me want to throw up in my mouth a little bit. But anyway, the reality is it's words and silence as our example. The example is credible witness. One of my favorite quotes of all time is from Pope Paul VI in Evangelii Nunciandi, Evangelization in the Modern World, when he says that modern man listens more willingly to witnesses than he does to teachers. And if he listens to teachers, it's only because they're witnesses. And so when we are that cheesy, they'll know we're Christians by our love, it's so true. And then that's attractive and people want to become a part of that. I'm thinking of a homeless man who lives in Springfield, Illinois, just out and kind of hangs out around the cathedral a lot. And he's just always there, and all the priests know him, all the parishioners know him, the sisters who go there know him. And we were doing this pro-life walk last year, and he said, I'm pro-life today, and he wanted to join in and be part of it. And he was right up there walking next to the bishop. And it was this beautiful thing. Like, he wanted to be a part because he saw the joy, he saw the peace, he saw the freedom.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Like, I don't think he's even Christian, but he knew that he had a place there. And so the credible witness of believers who love and call people by name.
Oh my
and
God.
That's exactly, Sister, I think the part where he says, also in that same paragraph, the best defense of God and man consists precisely in love. And, so that's right, that draw, that attraction that people experience when they see the joy of love embraced and lived. But I think also that strengthens the credibility and the witness of the church as well, because it's really easy for people in our day and age to like hate the bigotry, the bigotful Catholic Church that's hateful and intolerant and out of touch with reason and whatnot. And I personally find it's a lot harder for people to hate the hateful Catholic Church when the hateful Catholic Church has the name and the face of somebody that they know that cares for them deeply and that loves them. Whether it's the face of this priest or the face of Mother Teresa or whatnot, when love has a name and a face, it's a lot harder to buy that lie that God is not love, or that I think love alone is the most credible thing that the church can offer in her defense of what is true.
Yeah, and the truth is that all the statistics we can throw out there about the church's charitable organization and works is not the same thing as encountering what you're talking about, Father, like that one person that has that loving personal concern for you.
Right.
That you have to like make that a problem. Like that's a provocation. Here's this one person that has a concern for you in a way that most people don't. That I think is what Christ offers through us. I loved on paragraph 34 where he talks about practical activity will always be insufficient unless it visibly expresses a love for man, a love nourished by an encounter with Christ. My deep personal sharing in the needs and sufferings of others becomes a sharing of my very self with them. If my gift is not to prove a source of humiliation, I must give it to others, not only something that is my own, but my very self. I must be personally present in my gift. Wow.
This circles back to what Father Luke was talking about in the last podcast about throwing an orange at or just kind of just throwing money or whatever as he's walking to class in Rome. And it's so true. We could give handouts all day long, but if we're not taking time to ask someone their name and how we can pray for them. And I had a priest recently who challenged us not only to ask people how we can pray for them when we encounter them in their poverty, but to ask them to pray for us, especially in the visible sign of like my consecration, to be like, hey, can you pray for me now? Like, I'll pray for you. Can you pray for me? And the kind of encounter that can kind of really bring.
Oh, you're reminding me of Pope Francis. His first kind of like, he came out kind of like shy, in St. Peter's Square, and then asked the whole world that was watching to pray for him. I thought that was quite beautiful and humble.
And you think too, just like what are the most life-giving words ever spoken in human history? The most authentically loving words spoken in human history. This is my body given for you. And, as a priest, I get to say those words, and those words are so powerful. Those words are so life-giving and so authentically loving. I mean, there is a real self-donation when I'm celebrating the Mass, that this is me giving myself up for my parishioners. That is really profound. And I mean, those words are so powerful that when a priest speaks them, they make the God who is life, the God who is love, present on the altar. But married couples also speak those words, not with their lips, but, with their bodies in the marital act. This is my body, which is given for you. And that's the great lie in our culture today, is that kind of love, that kind of self-donation does not lead to life, and it does not lead to happiness. And so I think it's Peter Kreeft holds up that Satan knows how powerful and how life-giving those words that are the incarnation of love are. This is my body given for you. And so Satan attacks those words and twists them such that they are no longer the mission statement of the culture of life and the civilization of love, but they become the mission statement of the culture of death. So rather than this is my body given for you, the argument for the culture of death is this is my body and I do with it what I want. This is my body and it's all about me. How the premise originates well, but Satan attacks the conclusion. And we're called to self-donation. That's what Christ shows us.
Yeah, I think for many of my friends who become new moms, the line, this is my body given for you, has taken on a whole new layer and meaning of significance, being pregnant, giving birth, breastfeeding, waking up in the middle of the night, this is my body given for you. It's a whole other layer in the spiritual and biological maternity as well, Father. And the paradox of giving yourself away.
Yeah, that's not the path to death. That's the path to the fullness of living. The one who first spoke those says, I've come that you may have life and have it abundantly. Follow me. Yeah,
beautiful. Any other thoughts about and again, for those listening and following along with us, like these conversations are really just a survey of this document. There's so much in here, so it cannot exchange your own reading of it and studying of it, which we really hope and pray that you do, because they're going to be reflections and meditations that you can only receive in your own small groups in studying this document. So don't by any means think this is exhaustive. It certainly is not. Well, along those lines, and on paragraph 37, a personal relationship with God and an abandonment to his will can prevent man from being demeaned and save him from falling prey to the teachings of fanaticism, terrorism. So I think he does a really good job wrapping up this document with, again, like the importance of all of the loving activity, practical stuff, having to be rooted in prayer and in Christ, who is love, and God, who is love. Otherwise, we can take what can seem like loving actions and it can become fanaticism, terrorism. It can be all sorts of weird stuff. Like we get really weird without God if we're not praying, if we're not in relationship with him. So any final thoughts?